We all have busy lives, work, family, and everything in between. Sometimes the pressure can leave us feeling tired and overwhelmed. That's called burnout. It's not just being tired, it's a deep exhaustion that affects us mentally, emotionally, and physically. But the good news is, burnout doesn't last. With the right care, we can recover and come back stronger. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm Ruhi, and you're listening to Let's Align podcast. I'm really excited about the conversation we are about to have because it's the one that so many of us can relate to, whether we realize it or not. And more importantly, we are diving into how we can not only recognize it, but also bounce back stronger, wiser, and more connected to ourselves. And I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by the esteemed Debbie Simmons, who is here to offer her invaluable insights, share her personal journey, and provide practical advice for those who may be experiencing burnout, whether it is mild or severe. And just to talk a little bit about Debbie, she is a passionate community activist, a successful businesswoman, a dedicated wife, and a proud mother of 9 adopted children. As the CEO and founder of Anchor Point, she leads an organization focused on helping families thrive. Beyond that, she is the author of the inspiring book, The Heart of Legacy: Living a Focused, Faithful, and Fearless Life, where she shares her personal story of triumph, loss, resilience, and unwavering faith. Debbie, it's absolute an honor for me to have you here today, and I'm truly appreciative of your presence. Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm excited to be here with you guys.
All right, let's get started with our conversation. Sometimes we don't notice burnout until our body forces us to slow down. In your experience, how important is it really to listen to those early signs our body sends us?
Well, first of all, let me tell you, I would say I wish I had learned this when I was younger. So, the sooner you can learn this, the better. Is that our body is wonderful at giving us clues, but we go so fast in life that we often miss those. It took in my personal life about 5 or 6 years ago in a very high stressful season as CEO and mom of all these kiddos and stuff like that. I got out of a truck and I went to shut the door and it dug a huge hole in my leg.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to go to the emergency room and they stitched it up. It got infected. Then I got staph infection. They couldn't heal it. On and on and on and on this went. And the reality is that I had to actually look at what I was doing and actually go see a nutritionist because the doctors could not get it to heal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so what I learned in that process, it took me 9 months to get that sucker healed. Okay. That is crazy. And the reason is because my body was so burnt out, so deprived of every nutrient, everything that it basically was just going, what do I need to do to keep the major organs running? Like keep you breathing, pump the blood, and that's all I have time to do. I can't go down to this leg and fix this leg. It's okay if you lose your leg because I'll still have you breathing. That's a pretty serious way to have
Yeah.
to learn about burnout, right? And so, what I have learned as I've gone on my journey in the last few years is now that my body is healthier, I learned to be much more sensitive when things begin to change. So, like today is a little bit more stressful day than yesterday was. And so I know that I need to make some changes, but I've learned to hear that in my body. And one of the really funny things as I went through that injury was my coach, nutritionist, whatever we want to call him, said he asked me if I had stress in my life. And I was like, I don't know, maybe I'm a 3 out of 10. And he looked at me and he said, "You're lying." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? No, I'm not lying. I'm telling you the truth." And he goes, "No, your stress is way higher than that." And what I learned was I had lived in what we would call toxic stress for
Mm-hmm.
so long that I couldn't even identify that I was pinged out on the stress scale and really just causing my body a lot of trouble. So now that I know those things, I can begin to make adjustments. So I would just encourage us all to learn more about this wonderful body that God has given us. It gives us signs, but we ignore them. And so the first time I was really not stressed in a situation, I was like, is this what it really feels like? because I hadn't been that way in forever, right? And it was like, I really had to learn that. So I would say, hey, God's given us clues. You know, your stomach gives you clues, digestive clues. There's all kind of clues that we just don't pay attention to because we run at such high, fast paced lives. And so I really wish I would have learned that in my 20s. I better to learn it now than never, but these would have been great.
Absolutely. I think that's such an important point you called out. Often we are so caught up in our busy lives that we ignore the subtle signals our bodies are sending us. And the truth is, these early warning signs are our body's way of asking for attention. Isn't that true?
Yes, very much so. And you know what? We either make the adjustment then,
Hmm.
learn to pay attention and make the adjustment and figure out how to deal with it, or we're going to deal with it later in a situation like where I should basically be dead from that because my body couldn't figure out how to heal itself because it was in such a bad shape. And it was like, once I got through that, I just sat down with a nutritionist coach and I was like, okay, obviously I have some things to learn and there's some depletion in my body and stuff like that because I still want to be here. I still want to be making an impact. And so I had to really begin to learn in that area over the last 5 years of how to take care of the best of me so I can have the best of me to offer, right? And I still want to be here. I want to be with my grandkids. I want to do all the fun things, all those things. I don't want to miss out on those things. So listening
I
early.
I totally love your spirit where you say that, I really want to be healthy, I really want to be active. So kudos to you for that thought. Now, burnout can feel very personal and isolating. From your experience, why do you think so many people ignore the signs and just keep pushing through burnout instead of allowing themselves the time and space to heal?
So I think a couple of things happen, and I know this happens in my life. Is I, in particular, as a woman, have a lot of demands and expectations that are put on me. And I was crazy enough to end up with 9 children, so there's a lot of demands. There's very few. I can't even find a spot in my home when they were younger to like just breathe. And so I have to be very intentional. I went to a conference one time and it was a bunch of foster and adoptive moms, okay? And there's probably 30 or 40 of us. And the lady did this topic on self-care. And she asked this group of women, she said, "What does self-care look like for you?" And the whole room was basically silent. Okay. And then they go, this was their answers. This was our answers because I was in the group. One of them said, "Well, do you mean like do I manage to get up and get dressed every day? Because it's so chaotic, she ends up in her night clothes all day, and can't get her act together. You know, are you talking about like if we get like 4 hours of sleep at night? Or, it was just funny because all of their answers for self-care were just like, that's not even on our radar. Right. And you could tell that when you're dealing with a kid that has trauma in their background, it can be very draining on the mom. And so it was funny because she just gave simple tips. And I think the problem is that in our world, we expect us to all have it together,
Mhm.
to be able to do everything and to do it with a smile and to be no stress. And, you watch on TV all these people that you see and they seem to have their lives together, or you get on Instagram, Facebook, and everybody shows you their best self. And, you're going, it's all good. But the reality is that creates a false situation. So when I personally am struggling, when I look at the world and I look at, social media and I hear people talk and they seem to have it all together, then I am going to naturally pull away and not tell anybody because I don't want to seem like I don't have my act together. But actually, what we need to understand is that, especially from the way God has kind of wired us, is that we are best when we are in a community and of safe people. And I can tell them that I am struggling or I'm overwhelmed by this or whatever. And people who are safe for me, love me, look me in my eyes and tell me I'm okay, that I am still precious and I am still valuable, and that there's a way through. And those are the people that I need in my life. And when I don't have them, I isolate because I feel like I'm the only one with this challenge. And that is so, so wrong because every story, I deal with women all the time in the ministry that we do and the volunteers that come in and the staff, and every one of them behind them is a story. And they're not always pretty and they're not always easy,
Mm-hmm.
but they're survivors. And so I think there's power in this community concept of being in a safe space where you can let down and be who you are, and people love you and they help come around you and they get you to do your next best step and you can make your way. That's what we need to be seeking out. So when we feel like pulling away is actually when we need to lean in to save people because it's dangerous once we pull away.
Yeah. And I think a big part of why people push through burnout, even when they sense it's coming, is, as you call out, the pressure to keep up with the demands of life, whether it's work, family, or even personal expectations. And there is often this feeling that we should be able to handle everything, and admitting that we need a break can feel like a failure. What's your thought on that?
Yeah. So we should all be superheroes. That's what we should all be. But we're not superheroes and we weren't meant to be. And so I always, what I like to, from the world's perspective, will we potentially feel like a failure and, we can beat ourselves up and stuff like that? I have just in my life just gone, okay, what do I need to be able to move through this? You know, the feelings are just trying to take me out even more. And so I need to take those thoughts of I'm a failure, I'm no good at this. That is really Satan getting in our head trying to mess with us because we do have the ability to be more than enough, but we need to take care of ourselves. So, I think about like getting on the airplane. When you get on the airplane, they want you to put your mask on first and
Absolutely.
then put it on the other people, right? Well, that's so I'm still here to do something. I can help, because if I don't take care of me, then I can't take care of others. And so I think we just get that turned around. And so that is for me to understand that actually it's not a failure if I take a break. It's not a failure if I go find 5 minutes in a day to
Mm-hmm.
just breathe and listen to a song that I like or walk around the block and nobody's bothering me or go get a massage or whatever you can do. If I can just find 5 minutes, I'll be a whole different person. And so it's not failure to do that. Actually, what's going to be failure is when I don't do that and then I can't do anything anymore because it's coming. The crash is coming, right? And we have to be prepared for it. I think it's just our world just tells us we're failures, and that is not true. So you and I have to know where our worth and our value comes from. And then we stand in that, even when we don't feel it.
Yeah. So I think it's a lot to do with changing a perspective a bit so that it's really beneficial for us. Realizing you're burned out can feel very overwhelming, like you don't even know where to begin. And when someone reaches that point, what's one small, manageable, doable thing that they can do to begin their healthy journey and slowly rebuild their energy?
Sure. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to go back to, and this is a huge thing, but, early in my life, in my late 20s, I actually was pregnant with quads, and the boys were born and died in my arms. And I learned a valuable lesson as I walked through that. Okay. And the lesson was that when we end up in burnout situations, overwhelmed, anything like that, our natural inclination is to begin to ask the question, why? Why this? Why me? Why now? Why God? Why? And I've seen it thousands of times. The same thing comes up in me all throughout my career and as a mother and all this stuff. So when I was with the boys and they passed away, this was the question. And I had to learn that I had to lay down the question of why. Because here's the reason is this side of heaven, we will never get a good enough answer for why. Nobody could have told me in that situation, hey, whatever they answered would have never brought my boys back. It would have never taken away the pain. It just would never satisfy. And then when I get to heaven, why is not going to matter because there's no pain, no suffering. My boys are there. Everything's good. So I have to lay that question down because I am not going to get an answer that will ever satisfy. Okay. I need to change my question. And this is what I encourage people to do change your question to how do I survive? How do I make it through this? Okay. And hold on to that question. And then my answer to that for someone as a nice, easy, practical tip is breathe, first of all. Okay. So just breathe and then take the next best step. Okay. It doesn't have to be, we a lot of times get hung up in this thought of it has to be the right step. Forget that. Do the best next step that you can do. And some days for me, after losing the boys, maybe that was literally sitting up in bed and managing to get my teeth brushed that day, or getting up and doing one thing. And then I was so overwhelmed, I just went back. But what happens as we do the next best thing, then it begins to shed light on what the next best thing should be. And it sheds lights on what's the next best thing. But I keep answering that question. How do I figure my way? How do I get through this? And I have found in my life, God reveals the next best step every time. And I just go and keep making adjustments. And in my boy's case, I received a lot of healing through that. And then somewhere in there, what you'll find as you're making these steps, because a lot of steps in the same direction will be miles before you know it, right? And we'll be way better than what we were before. Then somewhere along the road, the question changes to how do I thrive? Not just how do I survive, but how do I thrive in this situation? And in that sweet space, you will begin to make impact. Like, so it gave me chances to minister to people that were losing children or start a ministry or write a book. All these things came out of that loss. But it's always been for me how to, get rid of why, how do I survive? I need to breathe and take the next best step. And then how do I thrive? That's kind of just a mantra that I live by all the time now. So that the next best step is really the thing for me.
Thank you so much, Debbie, for sharing your personal pain that you went through. It's very courageous of you to share that with us today. And I really love the concept that you said that, breathe up. And instead of just thinking of how do I survive, think ahead, how do I thrive? And that comes with practice and patience. I can definitely say that. And I believe it's important not to rush into doing more, but to focus on giving yourself the time to rest.
Yeah. Which is why I like the next best step. It's you determining it and you get to determine the pace at which you go. And it's okay if it's something small or if it's okay it's something big, but just whatever it is, do something. That's the way out. And I just love that as people I've watched people go through that tons and tons of times and see them on the other side.
All right. A lot of people associate burnout only with their jobs, but it can show up in so many parts of life, be it your parenting, caregiving, or even in our relationships. How can we start to recognize the signs of burnout beyond just the workplace? I think we had this conversation offline before getting into the interview, but I would really love to know your thoughts on this.
Yeah. Well, I would say it's everywhere because it is where what you need to look at is it is you. You are in all these situations. So it doesn't matter whether it's a job or home or parenting. It is what are all the things that I face as I go through my day? And if I am moving from one responsibility to another, then I go, okay, there's pressures here, there's pressures at work, there's pressures that I personally put on myself, there's pressures in the relationship. I'm just thinking, like right now, I'm going, okay, just thinking about today. Okay, I have my work pressure that I'm working through and stuff like that. I have a child that's struggling with a huge issue as they move into adulthood that his dad and I maybe have to make some difficult decisions and those are going to be hard. That's pressure. And then I have some personal things that I'm trying to accomplish. And so I'm going, how can I get those done before I have to go out of town tomorrow? And so these are all things that I am facing. These are depleting me of, the stress from that depletes me of nutrients that I need and stuff like that in my life. And it causes me to be stretched thin. So I would say, hey, it goes. Matter of fact, I had one staff member come in and she had a death in her family, and then she had another family member sick, and she was sitting in a meeting and she overreacted to something.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah,
It
she
actually
just
triggers.
Yeah, she had a strong reaction to something, and so after the meeting, I pulled her aside and I was like, "Hey, What's going on? So we were talking, and you know what? I finally told her, I said, hey, look, in your life, you only have so much bandwidth to handle things right now. Usually, if there wouldn't have been a death and there wouldn't have been the stress of the overthink, you would have had this much bandwidth. But you only had this much when you came into my meeting, which was fine. And I said, that's why you lost it. And so you've got to go take care of yourself and take care of your family stuff. And let's work on because I care about her as a person, right? And so I think we need to understand that. And if there is no place where you can begin to get 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes of time to figure out your way, you can't even think straight unless you can sit quietly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if
That's
I have
so relatable.
yeah, and if I have 9 kids running around, it ain't very quiet. I'm, like, in my bathroom going, "You better be almost dead before you come in here," because I'm like, "I just need a few minutes." But I think for us is it's everything, and we should pay attention to that. And sometimes one of those pieces of our life, personally, relational, parent, or job, each one of those will affect us differently at different times. So, like, today is more of a big issue for me with my child that I'm dealing with. So that's putting more pressure and can create that burnout sense on me. And job's not too bad today. So we just need to understand that we're looking at us, not the particular things. It's us and how are we doing in those situations. So it definitely is everything. And don't be fooled. It's everything. So it all affects us.
Yeah. I think the key is to pay attention to the subtle shifts in our energy levels, be it our mood and overall sense of fulfillment across all areas of life. Uh, once we start noticing these signs, we can definitely begin to address burnout as you called out, just to pay attention.
Yeah. And I think, what I notice in me, and it may not be in you, but in me, I find that when I am kind of reaching the edge, I am more cranky. Like I want to like snap at people. And usually I'm very patient, but I can feel myself getting ticked off. And I'm like, why am I upset? And what it is I just don't have room to handle anything else. And so that means I need to step back and get a fresh perspective and try and make some adjustments because I don't want to be that person, that's snapping at people and different things like that. That's not who I want to be. But that's always a good indicator for me is when I'm going, okay, that makes me mad. So I gotta make an adjustment.
Yeah, even when that situation comes at my end, more or less, yeah, even at times I snap at people, but I make a conscious effort. If something like that is arriving, I take a break, I breathe in and try and understand why exactly I'm reacting. Is there any external factor which has really triggered because of this I reacted certain way? So yeah, as you called out, breathing in and paying attention definitely helps. Now, building resilience is such an important part of bouncing back from burnout, especially when you're facing long term challenges. What are some of the habits or mindsets that have helped you stay resilient over time?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm a faith girl, so God is very important to me and balancing that and really staying true to who he has identified me to be as, that I'm valuable, I'm loved, I'm treasured. These are the things that I hold on to from a value statement type thing when the world says you're not successful, you're not this, you're not this. I'm going, no, these are who I am. And so I hold on to that truth even when it doesn't feel like it at the moment. And
Hmm.
then I love the concept of the breed and the next best step from that perspective has been such a thing for me. And then to realize that it's okay if I don't get, the 248 things on my to do list done today. But that if I do the absolute best with what I have, and where I am, then I'm okay and it's going to all work out. And then I love this concept, resilience is so important, right? And a lot of times we don't teach kids resilience. We want, as a parent, we want to do everything with them perfect and we don't want them to suffer and we want them to go. But you know what? When I'm working with parents and especially ones with trauma backgrounds, it is actually life is not about how much we keep it together. Okay. Life is about when something comes along and messes it up, how do we handle it and we walk through it, whether it's our own fault or whether it's something that's happened to us. And if we can go through something challenging or difficult and then we can come back around and reestablish the relationship. So, like when a parent has a child that does a wayward thing and there's a breakdown between them, if we can come back and we can restore the relationship and they can
Mhm.
move forward together, then that's how resilience is taught. Okay. So when we're going through these difficult things, the resilience piece, if we can get that right, then we are actually stronger in the end for being able to move forward. So I like to also remember that life, where we live, sometimes we have speed bumps so you don't go too fast in neighborhoods and stuff. And, when we're driving our car, when I go to a speed bump and I go over the right, like 1 or 2 miles an hour, then I can do that one pretty good, that little bump that came into life. But you know what? Some days I hit it going 25 miles an hour and it jacks up the car, messes me up. And some days I hit it at 100 miles an hour. And and so life is going to have all these road bumps in it because it's a journey. And, it's okay. We don't need to be surprised that things come in our lives, but how do we work our way through them? And so keeping that visual and that breathing and knowing that we can figure our way through it and have the power to do that is super cool. I will tell you just a little brain exercise. It's by Dan Siegel. Is that, our brain, if this is our brain, this is our amygdala, and then this is the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala is our fight, flight, and kind of freeze part of us. It's the emotional piece of our brain. Prefrontal cortex is where logical thinking happens. So when you and I get overwhelmed or we hit a road bump or whatever, what happens is we lose our lid, we lose our brain basically, and we can't think anymore. So the amygdala gets lit up, and it's great if you're being chased by a bear. You want to be able to just not think, you want to start running, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what it's for. But we stay lit up a lot. Okay. So our job is adults for kids or for ourselves is to figure out how to get ourselves in a healthy spot to get the prefrontal cortex re-engaged so our thoughts, our thinking can come online. So that's why the concept of breathing is so important because the breathing, just the deep breath in, allows the prefrontal cortex to come back online. So that's why they say always wait 3 seconds before you make a decision because you'll make it here and it'll never be good. But if you get this down, you'll make a good decision. Okay. So that's why it's so important to just know these kind of things and go, it's perfectly okay no matter where I sit to go and just take 2 deep
Breathe.
breaths and then go, okay, what's the next thing? That's where it is. So I just encourage people to just grab a hold of those little practical things and it'll make a world of difference for how they go through their day.
I completely agree that, resilience is the key to navigating the long term challenges. And it's often the habits and mindsets we cultivate over a period of time. So thank you so much for sharing your valuable perspective. Now, many people find themselves caught in a difficult cycle. They burn out, they recover, and then somehow they end up burning out again. What advice would you give to someone who is stuck in this cycle?
Take a vacation. No. That would be the first one. You know what I think is we need safe people that we give permission to
Mhm.
speak into our lives. Okay. I need people that I know love me and want the best for me, that I give them permission to say hard things to me.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what they can come and do and go, hey, and it's usually better if they're asking me questions versus just telling me because if I learn to ask good questions of people, then it causes them to think. And then when they're thinking, then they can work their way out of their mess. But I need people to come around and say, hey, have you thought of, do you feel like you're kind of run down right now? Or you really had kind of a strong response in that meeting? Is there something going on? Or you haven't had a day off in, 200 days, maybe should you take some time for yourself? Or what are you doing to take care of yourself right now? I need these people speaking in my life, and I need to trust that when they do, that there's some self reflection that needs to happen in me. And that self reflection can hopefully help me realize that I'm falling into the same trap again.
Yeah.
And then I need people now, once I have a person ask me those questions, then I need people in my lives that will hold me accountable to things that I say I will change or do. Well, I don't always like that. So I can be a turkey sometimes and be like, I don't want to talk about that. But I have to be humble and I have to be willing to let people into my life because they care for me. Not everybody's safe. Okay. So
Yeah.
it definitely needs to be trusted people. And it's not a ton of people either. You know, a lot of people can say things to me or don't like the way I do something or whatever. That's just feedback. And I need to evaluate that. But I need safe people that I know are for me to speak it. So if you don't have those circles, that's what you need. You need 2 or 3 safe people to do those kind of things with you and to hold you accountable and walk with you through it, or we'll fall for the same thing every time unless we've made some strategic changes. And that to me is the only way to get out of it. And I'll just give you this cute example is, when I need to lose weight or get healthy and walk every day, if I make that commitment with my husband, it's easy for me to break, okay? Because I love him. He's married to me. He's going to stay. If I tell that to you and you
Mm-hmm.
and I are going to go walking, oh my gosh, come hell or high water, I'll be there because I am saving face. I'm going with you. My husband, I'm like, oh, you love me. You'll be around. So, it's not always your husband that can be, or a spouse that can be the person for you. It needs to be somewhere outside of just your home too, probably. At least that's me anyway. But that's what I would say would be some of the things that I would look at putting in place because I did that all the time for
So I
years.
think I think it's really important to have some honest critic around us.
Yeah.
Okay, and what I'm hearing is that self-awareness and proactive strategies are the key.
Yeah, very much so. And just being willing to evaluate yourself. How
Mm-hmm.
often do we just sit back and evaluate, like, what are we doing and where are we trying to go? And how do a body check? How's my body doing? And what stresses do I feel? But that requires us to set aside a little time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're running at 100 miles an hour, we won't be able to do that. But if we commit at least once a week to spend 10 minutes and just do a check on ourselves, we could probably make a lot of good adjustments just with 10 minutes.
Absolutely. Bouncing back from burnout often isn't a straight line. There are emotional highs, lows, and everything in between. How can we practice? This is my favorite question. How can we practice more kindness and patience with ourselves during this healing process?
We should always be gentle with ourselves. Okay. And I think what we should learn to do in our journey is
Mm-hmm.
it is so good if you can do it, is to write down, I like to call put stakes in the ground or write down markers. And like, on January 1st, this was kind of where I was. On, February 1st, this is kind of where I am. And I did great in this area, and I struggled a little bit here, but I still made a little progress, And if I have a way of kind of looking at the progress that I'm making, it's okay that not every step is 6 steps forward. It's okay that sometimes I go back 2 because I got hit by this thing, but look, I survived it. And now I'm starting to pick up my pace again. But unless we have some way to look at those things, we forget those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I do that. I do that on a regular basis is just, hey, if I'm trying to get here or whatever, what are the steps that I'm going to take? And then how do I evaluate with that? And when we look at just at anchor point, when we plan, we set big goals that only God can accomplish. And you know what? We do our best to do them, but we don't like beat ourselves up. We go, okay, that worked or that didn't work. Let's make adjustments and let's go because we're doing the best that we can with what we have at the moment. And you just pick it up, make adjustments, and keep moving. And so, nothing, you're right, nothing is straightforward. But if I don't have some stakes in the ground, gives me nothing to look at. And that's what we want is we want stakes that remind us that, oh, we did overcome, like I did lose boys. I did survive that. This challenge that I face now, I can do this. I had an accident with my leg. I survived it. And, I made adjustments into how I do my life. I'm so much healthier now. So now when I eat a candy bar, that's backwards, right? That's not the right direction. So, but look at how far I've come. So, okay, yeah, I ate the candy bar, but let's get back on track and let's keep going. And so I can do that and be gentle with myself and just go, okay. That's where we are for the day. So it's okay. I think we make too much of trying to be perfect all the time. And the reality is there's if I can go ahead and understand that I'm going to screw up, it's okay. And I can keep moving forward. That takes a lot of pressure off. Do the best you can with what you have in the moment, and you'll figure your way. And that's all anybody can really expect of you or ourselves.
Yeah. What I hear is that, living in the moment and also celebrating the small wins during the healing process.
Yes, very true.
Yeah. And preventing burnout before it becomes overwhelming is so much easier than trying to recover from it. Are there any daily habits or routines that you have found to be especially effective in helping you maintaining your energy levels so high and active?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, I do a lot of things and I'm extremely busy and have a lot of responsibilities. So I would say, I plan my days as much as I can. And
Mm-hmm.
I have certain things that I want to accomplish and get done. And I'm a very task oriented girl. So, once I set my way, I'm like all the way down. But you know what? Learned over the years that whatever plan I put in place, that I need to hold that plan lightly. Okay. Meaning I need to be okay that that plan may change. So, for instance, I may have, 26 things I want to accomplish, and I've gotten three done, and some staff member comes in, or a volunteer comes in, or a child comes in, and we have a 10 out of 10 on the Richter scale going on for this person, and they're interrupting my plan. Right now, obviously, God has allowed them in my life for whatever reason at that moment, that I need to understand that there's something bigger going on there. And I need to be okay. And this is why I hold loosely that my plan gets laid to the side and I deal with the situation that I need to deal with. And we work through it and do all that stuff. And then I might need to recuperate for a little bit after that, but then I'll pick up my list again. But now I may have lost 4 hours of my day, right? But my list still has 23 things on it, and I will see what I can pick up and do. And then I may get another interruption. I may get all these things. And at the end of the day, if, like you had said earlier, if I have been fully present and I have handled people well, then I can release the fact that I didn't get those other things done. And I can write a list for the next day, and, begin my day that way. But I mean, I maybe just save this person, not me personally, but, having the conversation, save this person from all this other stuff. And people are valuable more than my task. And so that's why for me, I just have to be willing to plan a day, hold it loosely, and kind
Mm-hmm.
of see how God develops it, being very much in the present, right? Because I could look back at the past and kind of look at the markers, but you know what? I can look at the past and I can't change anything in the past.
Yeah.
Any regrets, anything like that. I could look in the future and I can pick up all kind of anxiety or worries, but I don't have any ability to affect it either. The only thing that I can do is what I can do in the present. So we get pulled into these other things, and that also increases our burnout level because we put a bunch of stress on ourselves. And so I have to live in the moment. It is the only thing I have the ability to affect, and trust that God's writing a bigger picture and has the rest of it. And I'm just one of the people on the journey. And so for me, that's been the biggest thing, is holding loosely my plans and my expectations and my demands on myself and doing the best that I can in the moment and taking care of people and loving people.
I love the way how you said that, you do have plans in place. At the same time, being a bit flexible, that really helps you a long way. I
Mhm.
remember initially when things didn't go my way, especially work wise, if I have to do list and if I'm not able to finish off, say instance, if I have 20 things to be done and if only 5 or 10 are completed and I have 10 more to go, the anxiety and the stress that I used to get, or the pressure that I used to put on myself that, I have to finish it off. And in that process, I think we lose the track and we don't think straight. As you called out earlier, it's very, very important to be present in the moment and, of course, being flexible with the plan. As we wrap up, what's one key piece of advice you would like to give to someone who is struggling with burnout right now and is feeling overwhelmed by the road to recovery? I'm pretty sure our listeners out here, while they are listening and watching this, pretty sure there could be someone who must be going through that at this moment. So, what's your piece of advice?
Okay. Well, I would say, first of all, I would love for you to breathe and just stop for a moment. And then I want you to know that you are extremely loved, that you're valuable, and that you're a treasure. And to just feel that just wash over your whole body as you think about that. And to know that you have great worth and you have wonderful things to give and to take your next best step.
That's so empowering. I hope everyone listening remembers that, recovery doesn't have to be rushed and being kind to yourself is most important. Thanks for sharing that. Before we finish, could you please let our audience know where and how they can find more about you and your work?
Sure. Yes. And I would say the book is a fun journey because it goes into all the things that you can learn that you don't have to experience yourself. So I've done it all, made all the mistakes. You can just pick it up from there. And hopefully that will bring some ease on burnout. But you can go to the website is thedebbie.simmons.com. And the book is there. A lot of my speaking stuff and coaching and all that good stuff. All of the social media handles are there. And then if they want to know about Anchor Point and some of the stuff that we do there, that is at anchorpoint.us. And so they can check that out too. We'd love for them to be a part of the ministry if they would be interested in doing that.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share all the links that you have mentioned for our audience so that they can definitely reach out to you. Thank you so much, Debbie. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show today. And trust me, there are a lot of things that I have learned today. Firstly, is that being flexible. Many a times, I'm a bit hard on myself to make sure that everything is completed within the defined timelines. But after hearing you and your journey and everything that you spoke today, one learning for me from this discussion is be a bit flexible in whatever you do and live in the moment. Breathe in when something is hitting you. Look at the signs and be very kind and gentle to yourself as you're going to be to someone else.
Yes.
I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you. We are almost at the end of the hour. Thank you so much, Debbie, for joining me today and sharing your wisdom on burnout and bouncing back. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you and learning from your experiences. Thank you so much for that.
Yes. My pleasure.
And I'm sure that this conversation has given our audience some helpful tips and encouragement on their own journey. And if you all have enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to hit like, share, and share it with your people. And before we wrap up, I want to leave you all with one thought. It's okay to take things one step at a time, and above all, be kind to yourself along the way. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much, Debbie.